One. Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm joined by the one and only Tim Micallef of Sportsnet, who hosts Sportsnet Central for obviously, I said Sportsnet about 4 times now, so I will stop here. Thanks so much, Tim, for taking the time and coming on. I'm obviously a huge fan of yours. I love Tim and Sid for so long before it was on national television. So I do really appreciate you taking the time and coming on.
Anytime. You got a couple of nice co-signs along the way, which is always nice for when you're going on to a podcast and you might not know who you're talking to. But I also have seen the work along the way, and I'm a big Canadian basketball fan, so I've seen you put in the time and the work, and always willing to jump on with someone who does the work.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I mean you've covered youth sports and basketball in this country for longer than maybe I've been alive. So I do I do appreciate you taking the time and doing this. And
How old are you, Alex?
I will. I don't want to make you feel old. I am 25.
Yes, I have been covering basketball for longer than you've been live.
Yeah.
It scares the bleep out of me, but we can just move on quickly. All right.
It's okay. I always think I'm Shay's age, so that's kind of my barometer of kind of when he ages out, then I'll feel different. But I want to ask you a little bit about your career, and I know you grew up in a big sports household. Just talk about your love of sports and kind of how that's kind of guided you to where you are today.
Yeah, so oftentimes, not as much anymore, but when I was young, I would say, before I introduced myself, I would say I'm the youngest of 4 boys in a sporting family. And hopefully that was like the caveat that everyone knew, like, 1, this guy can take a punch. 2, he's been around way too many dudes in his life and is very comfortable. 1 bathroom, 4 boys, things like that. When I went to university, I didn't realize that everyone didn't live that way. So it kind of guided a lot of my life, being the youngest of 4 boys in a sporting house. My dad played some hockey, played at St. Mike's, which is a real kind of factory. They basically played with Dave Keon and Frank Mahovlich, and your dad's dad might know who those guys are.
I know who that is. Don't worry.
They're pretty good players. Jerry Cheevers. So we all kind of grew up. We just played everything. He wasn't like a, you got to play hockey guy. He was like, play sports, have fun, and if you want to take it seriously, I'm here for you kind of guy. And so all of us did kind of sort of choose one to take seriously, whether it was football or hockey. I was the guy who wasn't really good at any of them, and I kept searching. So I tried basketball, I tried baseball, I was the number 2 BMX racer for my age. I was the most success I had was probably BMX racing. And then when I realized that I couldn't turn pro till I was 16, I said, what am I doing here? That's another 4 years away. So I kind of tried everything. And that's kind of why I feel like this business was made for me, because I played volleyball. I tried every possible sport that I could get my hands on and kind of had fun with it the entire way. So that's kind of the baseline of where I was and why I'm here.
Well, I'm going to choose some violence right now, because Tim, what is your favorite sport?
You can't make me ask. I will fight you. That is, you choosing violence is right. I honestly, like,
is it spectrums or is it like?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how it changes, but it never really changes. I get excited. Like, you'll get bored, 70 games into an NHL season or an NBA season. You're like, all right, let's get to the playoffs. And then if, March Madness rolls around, then I'll start, okay, now we're, and then the Masters starts and you're like, oh, right. Like, I like golf too,
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like whatever I get tired of, I will replace with something that I thoroughly love. But I like, even when I go on vacations and stuff, like, my wife will laugh at me. I'm like, can we go see like Dominican Summer League or Winter League here? Like, can we go, like, I'd love to go watch sumo wrestling, like stuff like that. My wife just laughs, like, we were in Italy and there were like, I don't know, it looked like 18-year-old kids playing, maybe younger than that, 16-year-old kids playing soccer on a tiny field. And I sat and watched with a coffee in my hand. And my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is how you grow it. This is where it comes from. Don't you understand that? And she's like, let's go, so that's just kind of the guy. I just love sports. And if you made me choose, I don't know if I could. But it was like predominantly in the house, basketball, hockey, football. I also played lacrosse too.
Okay. Oh,
That's a tough
wow.
sport. Yeah.
That a lot of cross checks. A lot of cross
Yeah.
checks.
I played 2 years up in lacrosse because it matched up with one of my brother's practices.
Okay.
And like it was the practice before my brother. And I just got the absolute bleep kicked out of me for a year and a half before I just said no mas.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I want to ask you, as you know, you've had such an incredible career, but just I know you started kind of in an interesting way at school. Just talk a little bit about your career journey.
Yeah.
I know you went to Carleton, my kind of my alma mater as well, but just talk a little bit about your career journey. I think you started at a radio station writing
Mm.
traffic. That's what the little birdie on the street said.
Very good, very good. That was so in high school, I realized I wasn't a good enough athlete, and I wanted to stay close to sports. I knew I wouldn't play at a certain level, so I figured out, um, let's try and find another way. And I thought I would be a camera person. Like I thought that would be amazing. Being a camera person at live events would be awesome. You get to go into the live events, you get to watch them. That was going to be me. And then I got the co-op. I think every high school student should have to do a co-op, like honestly.
Huh.
And I didn't. I did a summer school co-op so that I could get a spare in
Mm.
my
Yep.
what was then grade 13 year. And I thought I was really smart. Like, and I went to a radio station, CJZ in Toronto, which is easy rock, easy listening,
Yeah.
yacht rock for now people that are my age. And and they just didn't really have a sports department. They didn't really, so they had a traffic department, and I would write the traffic reports, and they would let me do sports reports, just write them out. And then if they had time in their news updates, they would use them. And for the first week, they wouldn't use them at all. And then a couple people like, oh, these are pretty good. You should explore this. And then they started reading them on air, and it was kind of like a high, like to know that what I had written was going on air, even at CJZ Easy Rock. And I kind of got hooked there, and I was like, okay, let me try and, see where I could pursue that. And so there were two programs that were kind of sort of close in my area. One was Ryerson, now
Yep.
TMU, and the other one was Carleton. And Ryerson's radio and TV did not let me in.
Mm.
Carleton's journalism did, which I don't understand. Like it was supposed to be Carleton journalism, then Ryerson,
Yeah.
and I didn't get into that. And I went to journalism at Carleton. So I ended up in Ottawa. I had family in Ottawa, still have
Okay.
family in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I figured, why not take the journey and go out? The why not was because I wasn't ready to go to university. And I didn't do so well, but so that's where it all kind of started. And then I was CKCU was also one of the stops along the way, which is Carleton's University
Yep.
radio station. There was a guy named Olu Saul who was kind enough to just again say, hey, you want to just write some sports stuff? And then I would give it to him, and he's like, hey, do you want to do it? Sure. When I'm not here, do you want to host the show? Sure. Yeah, that would be awesome. And it just kind of built up like that. So it all kind of started with just happenstance. I was trying to get a spare in grade 13 where I could have a longer lunch or sleep in a little longer.
So talk a little bit, because I know you went. I'm pretty sure you didn't finish Carleton, but you went to the Score and interned there, and there's some pretty notable people that
Yeah.
joined you alongside at the Score. One of them, Cabby, who obviously I interviewed, but just talk about that experience, and you can name the others that were alongside you and what that experience was like, just getting into your
Yeah.
foot in the door.
Yeah. So at the Score, my first intern day, I walked into an area where kind of the intern stand, and there was usually like 3 or 4 interns, and the guy waiting for me was Sid Sixero.
Wow.
And the guy around the corner writing script that had like the first paid job was Cabral Richards, and the other guy was Adnan Verk, who's now at MLB Network, does stuff with the NHL Network, has been on ESPN. So there was like Ryan Payton, there was James Sobalski was just getting his job, another Ottawa guy, just getting his foot in the door. There were a lot of like good young talent kind of just cruising along the halls at the Score, because the Score did this thing where they hired people who wanted to be there, right?
Yeah.
Like it's crazy now. Like I feel like you gotta have an in or schooling, or like cold called, I want to say like 10 to 15 different places before the score kind of became something, and none of them would take me. Like, oh, we only take people from Carleton, or we only take people from Ryerson, or have you graduated? We only take people with this mark. And I'm like, none of those things apply to me. I'm just a dude. I was working at Bell Mobility, but it was what a great place to walk in the doors of, looking back now, to have something like the Score, where it was just a bunch of people who really loved sports, who were trying to make TV, even though at times it was bleeping awful.
Talk about, because I know you have an interesting story about just how you got kind of your foot in the door at the Score as well, just in terms of reading, was it NFL highlights? I think that's, or something like that. You were
Yeah.
the voice. Just talk about that, because I thought that was an interesting kind of story.
So the progression happens where, you go into archives and you log information for everyone else to use. And so at one point they trusted me with, okay, this guy knows his NFL stuff. Why don't you do something with the NFL? So I pitched, I'll do NFL previews each and every week. So I'll write a preview for every game, and about a 30-second chunk, and someone can read it, and I will cut them together with the clips that I've pulled from NFL films at the time. So they looked really sharp because it was all NFL films and not my own stuff. And so, long story short, I was giving them to a guy to read who was our voice guy at the Score at the time. And he's like, yeah, the big voice who walks around and says, hey, you're listening to Easy Rock 97.3. And so I would hand him my scripts, and he didn't know football. And so literally I would have to sit in the studio with him, or the recording studio with him, and correct his pronunciation on all the players. And it was the editors who turned to like the bosses and were like, we have to recut this all the time because he doesn't know the name. Just let Tim do it. And so then guys started helping me put together a bit of a demo reel. And then finally my boss relented and was like, just read them. Like, I don't want to hear from these editors anymore. Just, you can read them. And that was kind of my first foray on air.
I know you, obviously we talked about just before about your love of kind of OUA or OUA CIS. I think it's U Sports now, but just there's always different acronyms and names. But
someone's trying to rationalize the position. I get it. Yeah,
exactly. But just talk about, I know you did a lot of calls of, I think, volleyball, basketball, men's, women's, everything. Just talk about what that was like for you, and maybe what do you think makes a good play-by-play announcer in your mind, Tim?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I did everything that the Score had, basically. So it was basketball, volleyball, football mainly. And I absolutely loved the play-by-play. It was the closest thing that I got to the high of playing, because you're constantly adjusting to, like if I'm doing Central, it's pretty much laid out how it's going to go. Tim and Sid / Tim and Friends, not a lot of that was laid out. So there's a bit of a rush there, but when you're doing a live event, anything can happen.
Yeah,
you have to be prepared for anything. You have to be ready for anything. And it was just such a fun thing to do, and to watch these kids kind of at a level that I knew that I couldn't get to. There's still a little bit of reverence from me, where like I was this failed athlete watching. Like, I probably could have played CIS U Sports football, but I would have been like a special teamer running through walls for people. So I had this like reverence, like these are really good athletes. And as I got to know all of it a lot more, I kind of became passionate about how good an athlete this was. There were guys going from U Sports to the NFL, never mind the CFL. There were guys that I did that ended up playing NFL downs. And if you pulled the average Canadian at the time, even now, people will say, like an American high school would beat them. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, absolutely no idea what you're talking about. These are like 320-pound O linemen. Like, they would just run down their throat. So I had this appreciation. And for me, it was always, I had like this book where I'd write things down. I have several books where I write things down, but sight, sound, smells. Give me a feel of what it's like to be at this game while providing the information that every play-by-play person does. Like, I think Bob Cole, in my mind, is one of the greatest play-by-play announcers of all time, because you got a sense of the game and the
Hmm.
excitement of the game by the way his voice brought it to you. Like you felt like you were in the game. Like if you were sitting with your friends, you just wanted to know who had the puck.
Yeah.
And, like the excitement would rise and fall. The anticipation, I think, is a huge part of play by play.
Hmm.
Understanding when you might be seeing a big play, which is why Tony Romo made such an impact when he first started,
Yeah.
because he was calling out, recognizing the plays. And I think Bob Cole was so good at that, where he understood the flow of the game. He was an athlete himself, so he understood the flow of the game and knew when to come up and when to come down. And like there's people that the broadcast networks feel are really good, that are really smooth, guys like Joe Buck,
Yeah. Yeah.
who might not get that excited. And for me, that's like, I understand why he's not doing it, because he's doing a national event. Or baseball guys that do that too. Bob Costas, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for,
Yeah.
who don't get excited with the play because they're worried that they'll be
Well,
considered biased.
no, I just think of his call of Jordan, right? Like
Yeah,
in 98, where he sets the scene. Like when you talk about the sights, it's
yeah,
like with everything on the line for numbers, like he kind of gets the moment. And I just
yeah.
think of that about that a little bit about Costas. Was that something that you kind of almost worked on in terms of,
No, without a doubt, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how was, like, how did you work on that? Was it like thinking about like
I
the
think,
site? Mhm.
yeah, I think it's like the one thing that people would keep tuning in. You can't expect people to watch the entire game, right?
Yeah.
So at first I would just be like, well, everyone's watching, it's fine. But then I realized, oh, if you're just tuning in, if you're just flicked over in this commercial break, this reset here as we get back into play, um, things like if it's the last play of the game and you realize like the importance, like you're just describing about Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Like lay it out a little bit, like explain to someone who may have never been watching this why this means so much, or what the and that's something that I definitely think is lost on a lot of guys who are just trying to make a TikTok or a highlight
Yeah.
reel. Or you can hear the guys and girls out there who know that their voice will be used in in promos
Yeah.
and in highlights, and they're just getting excited for that reason.
Yeah.
I think there's like a build in a game. And then if you've ever been to a game, there is.
Yeah.
And sometimes that falls flat on its face because a team just buries the other team, or someone doesn't show up, or a star player matchup doesn't work out that way. But when it does, it can be absolutely glorious.
Well, I found this a really great call of yours that you talked about with Aaron, and I just want you to like kind of relitigate this. Is that not sure anyone lost here? We just ran out of time. How do you feel about that? How do you feel that call aged for you, Tim?
Yeah. I so that's been written down in my book for a long time as the preparation to, if you have that amazing game.
Yeah.
And at the university level, I think it's a little bit different, where at the pro level, someone always loses.
Yeah.
That I don't think I would use that line at the pro level, but at the university level, I used it in Western and Queens in the Yates Cup, and it was one of those games that I'm describing where everything, the two leading passers in the history of U Sports slash CIS slash CIAU
Everything.
history. Yeah, they were at the time, I want to say they were the top two teams in the country, but they might not have been. Like everything laid out for this to be a great game. And if you can watch it back, if you'd have the patience to watch that, it was an unbelievable game. Went back and forth. Both quarterbacks were great. It was Michael Faulds and Danny Brannigan. And Michael Faulds was playing on a completely torn knee. And it was an unbelievable game. And at the end, Queens wins. They rush the field. It's a scene that you would see in the United States, not necessarily Canada. And at the end, I said, I'm not sure anyone lost here. We just ran out of time. And it was a last second heave. And
Yeah.
if we had gone another play. So I don't hate the call, but I
Okay.
understand if you were Greg Marshall, who's the head coach at Western, or Michael Falds, or any of the other guys who lined up in that game, you might turn to me and go, actually, Tim, I lost. We did
Yeah.
not play for the Vanier Cup that year. I hope, and maybe this will happen in like 15 years or
Mm.
20 years. One of those guys will come and say, you know what? You were right. Nobody
Oh,
lost. Like, that
oh,
was a crazy game. We gave it our all. But football players, they
yeah.
one missed play, I could have done this and we would have done that. I could have done this. But if you were just watching it, the magnificence of that struggle was awesome.
Well, I want to transition as best as I can from that to just you working alongside Sid Sixero for so long. Just talk a little bit about, obviously you talked about working together at the Score, but talk about maybe that origin story of you guys, having the show and then it becoming a nationally broadcasted show. Just walk us through that and maybe a bit of your relationship with Sid as well.
So back in the Score days, we would do highlight packs that were recorded overnight, and you would just there were no faces, it was just voices. And eventually those two interns that met in the hallway kind of became friends and both got into the spot where we were voicing those highlights. And there were other guys in there like Adnan Verk. There were guys like James Sabalski, and it became like a contest who could come up with the best highlights in a night, and we would compete. And I always chuckled at Sid's highlights, and he would always come in and go, "Oh man, you really killed it on the Jays," or "You really that." Like, we would have the most fun on the Twins and the Royals, right? Like, where there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of expectation on those highlights, so you could have a little bit of fun. And so we kind of got this mutual respect. And then I was getting some reps with Greg Sansoni at the time, Martine Guyard on the desk.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one time where they put Sid and I together, and there was just kind of a good chemistry almost immediately.
Yeah.
Like, you could almost feel it. We were both kind of raised in and around watching kind of ridiculous any sport on planet Earth, which is what he would do too. And we would make these like obscure references that only the other guy would get, but it was funny and you'd laugh, and people seemed to enjoy the funny back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. And then so they kept putting us together, whenever there was like an opening or someone was sick, it would be like, all right, Tim and Sid, let's put Tim and Sid together. Let's put Tim and Sid together. So finally, we got kind of this regular shift together, and it was just like, you could feel the chemistry immediately.
Yeah.
And like, people around the building could feel the chemistry, like behind the scenes could feel the chemistry immediately. And so that's really how it started. It was just a couple shifts here and there. And then they started putting us together. And then eventually they gave us kind of the marquee show at the Score, which was called Score Tonight.
And what was that like, that transition from the Score to like Sportsnet to having your own, like, just explain a little bit more about that, and maybe what are the challenges in having a daily sports show that feeds not only Toronto but the whole country?
Right. So they canceled Score Tonight.
Yeah.
And Sid and I were just kind of looking around, and I said, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And literally he said to me, like, "What's a podcast?"
Yeah.
Like, it was in the early days of podcasting. I said, "Well, it's just, you get a microphone, you sit around and you shoot the bleep, and you have conversations." And he's like, and literally he did not think anyone was listening at all.
Yeah.
And we just had real conversations, and it was awesome. It was fun. And we added Donovan Bennett to the mix.
Yep.
One of the guys that I did play-by-play on while he was playing at Western. We had a bunch of different guys, Rob Pizzo, who's now at CBC. There's a bunch of different people who kind of jumped in and around it, and people started listening, and it eventually became the #1 podcast in Canada. And so people started noticing. We looked at syndicating it, and then the Score was in this process of being sold. We didn't know it at the time, to Sportsnet. Sportsnet came sniffing, and we decided just to make the jump to radio, because we knew the Score was going nowhere at that point. And then 6 months later, they were sold to Sportsnet. So that's the origin. We ended up, working together. At first, it was local radio, which was really easy. We were both Toronto guys. And then it morphed into national TV and radio. And having worked at the Score, and and the years I had done play-by-play across the country, I used to work for the Hamilton Tire Cats as well. I did the play-by-play for the Tire Cats, and I traveled the country. I understood that there was this feeling outside of Toronto that it was the Toronto Sports Network, and it was I had a real sense of like, you can't always put Toronto first, even though it's the biggest market in the country. Like, you have to service the rest of Canada hates Toronto, because when they tune into these stations, it was 20 minutes of the Leafs and Jays and everything else. Landscape's kind of changed now. There's no more Montreal Expos. There's no more Vancouver Grizzlies. So those kind of two teams can be almost national teams.
Yeah.
And I think the Jays have become a great example of what you can do that. But so we really had to work at making sure that, we were servicing Calgary and Edmonton and Ottawa and Vancouver once we went national. And it kind of changed the dynamic of the show a little bit, from just like these two Toronto guys going crazy to making sure that you service everyone.
What's the process like for you, like behind the scenes, when it's, a Tuesday night in March and there's, 10 NHL games on the docket, an NBA game, spring training, and then you have to somehow synthesize it all into a show, and like, how much sports are you watching? Is it like, are you taking notes and up till 1 p.m. on the late, like, just
No, you're I would usually do like a little spec sheet of all that's out there. So like every night I'd like write 5 in the NBA, 8 in the NHL, if there's spring training going, whatever else there were, and I'd list them all on like a little note, and then kind of think of storylines for each. And then it's always, to me, like, what are people talking about? Like, what is if you were going to go to a bar in Vancouver, if you're going to go meet your favorite sports friends, what would they be talking about that day, that night? And that was always kind of how. So I'd start with, here's everything, and then move on to like, what are people talking about? And then sometimes there's things that just pop up that if people knew about, they would be talking about. Right. And that was like, I was always one of the things that Sid and I, kind of before the days of the internet, made a real impact on, was finding stuff that no one else had ever seen. Now everyone's seen everything. Like there's no chance, but we really kind of leaned into like, we're going to get foreign language calls of great soccer goals, or or foreign language calls of baseball, where people hadn't really heard the Spanish announcers back in the day, and we kind of really leaned into that. And that was real, like, okay, here's everything that's happening tonight, here's what everyone's talking about, and here's what you should be talking about. So it ended up kind of going into those 3 kind of silos and trying to figure out how to mold all that together.
I always love when you guys brought in like the Guatemalan, and it's like go like that. I love that stuff in the soccer context. I just, before, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions about sports, because that's
let's do
you
that.
Make your bread and butter. But I just want to give you kind of the floor. Like, what's it like now hosting Sportsnet Central? Does that take you back to the Score days a little bit for you? And
yeah, without a doubt, it's fun to jump back in. I actually really enjoy doing highlights. I think it should be fun. I think I'm not trying to be too jokey out there, but I think it should be fun, because sports are fun, and so I get to kind of get back into the swing of highlights, and trying to make them and find the things that people haven't seen, the little things that they may not have noticed in the games, and it's been a ton of fun. So being back in that, writing down everything that's going on tonight, figuring out where it needs to go and all that stuff, that's a ton of fun for me.
Well, I've been really enjoying it, and I hope the Leafs, or obviously the Jays didn't go very far, but the Leafs do well, and then I can see you doing it after they third round of the playoffs and deep in. So hopefully,
I just pray for a Canadian team, period.
Yeah, no,
my God, it's been too long.
Here in Ottawa, I think the Sens might take a little run for it, but we'll see. We'll see. They've looked good so far. I have a question, and it's a bit different because you are someone that knows so many sports, but I always ask people if they're basketball, hockey, football, XYZ, if they were the commissioner of that sport, what rule would they change on their first decree? Do you have like a rule change that you really feel passionate about? And it can be hockey, baseball, football, basketball, anything, even soccer. You can touch into that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think we should It's funny because I never would have thought until you said soccer, I wouldn't even gone there. But
Yeah.
I think we should card divers on instant replay.
Mm.
Just go back into the game and say, and I don't even mind if you do this in hockey too, or basketball. I think basketball does do it with the flopping. They'll go
Kind
back
of.
to go to a review. But I think in soccer, it's so egregious sometimes, and you can change a game on a flop that if it's obvious, play the video in the stadium and walk over and give the guy a yellow card for flopping.
What are your thoughts on VAR? Because that is like one of the most hot topic. we're here. I have to.
When you get it right, it's good.
Yeah.
If you screw, it's supposed to be that you're not supposed to screw it up, but in the last little while we've seen it screw up. NHL has used it incorrectly too. The NFL and CFL for a while used it incorrectly when they're doing like pass interference and you're taking too long and stopping the game. Like the NHL going back and measuring whether or not a skate blade lifted off a blue line, like that's ridiculous. That's not what it's meant for. It's meant for, I think baseball does it pretty well where bang bang play
Yeah.
could be tough. Down the line, is that fair or foul? Is that a home run? Like those are things that
Ball strike.
yeah, I don't know about ball strike. I'm anti robot
You are?
umpire.
I'm
Oh
pretty sure
yeah,
they're doing it in minor leagues. I've heard.
yeah.
So that I want to ask you because I found the whole topic of John Schneider and analytics. Where do you stand on the Blue Jays? Obviously it didn't work out in their favor, taking out Berrios in the third inning, but how kind of would you balance the two of analytics versus maybe more the eye test and the rhythm of the game in baseball, but also in sport in general?
Yeah, I think there's a real that will be the $1 billion question moving forward. Is obviously the analytics give you insight, but I think all the leagues have to figure out a way to balance what are the analytics versus what's happening in real time in front of you. And anyone who's ever played any sport at any time knows that at some point the numbers completely go out the window. That's just the way it is. You can try and forecast, you can try and predict, but if the analytics work that much, then people would be absolute billionaires betting on these games because they could just throw it into a system and figure out who's going to win.
Yeah.
And there are people who have done it well, but there aren't many of them. So, like, I think this is like, here's the deal with the Jays. It was obviously a mistake. The idea behind the mistake was pretty solid analysis. It was get the left-handed bats out of the lineup, and then later you will reap the rewards of having the left-handed bats out of the lineup. Now, doing it at that time was a mistake, but you would ask 100 of the Jays fans who think that John Schneider or whoever was responsible for that to be fired. And then you could ask those same 100 Jays fans, would you take Kevin Cash as his replacement, who is the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays? And most of them say, yeah, that's a great replacement. And Kevin Cash did that with Blake Snell in the World Series.
Yeah.
Exact same thing, right? Like there is a lot we love in this day and age to be one side or the other. You are one side or the other. If you're not with us, you're against us. But there's so much nuance that is so interesting to dive into. And for me, I think it was an obvious mistake. I think it was rooted in a good idea, and I think it was executed wrong. And that's how sports is going to go moving forward. How can you apply? There's a coach for every basketball player on the floor. Sorry if you hear Snoop. That's my dog barking.
That's okay. That's okay.
There's a coach for every player on the floor in basketball. You can't possibly apply all of that information while playing the game of basketball at a high speed with moving parts all over the place. Yeah. Can you, in a moment, grasp what rotation is best suited against this team and that shooter? And yes, of course you can. And that helps immensely. And I think that's exactly where analytics works, but there's no possible way for the human brain to process all of the information that we're giving it right now. And I think that's why you see overloads like John Schneider in that moment, overthinking it and going, okay, Kikuchi.
Yeah. Do you think it's more as much just like being preset right? Like if you're saying the
Yeah.
analytics, we have to do it, because that's what I hear in your kind of argument or kind of statement, is that, they read the room wrong, even if maybe at a certain point the room was gonna, I don't know where my analogy is going, but
Yeah.
just
But since then, we've seen a ton, right? Like if
yeah,
you're watching Major League Baseball playoffs, there's been a ton of spots where really good pitchers have been yanked. It's worked out.
yeah,
And because it works out, no one says anything. When
yeah,
it doesn't work out and it's your team in your country,
yeah.
it's an entire thing. But you'll talk to a lot of baseball people. They'll put up with it. They'll put up with the here, make the mistake, just learn from it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the Leafs. Obviously, they haven't won the cup in a long, long time. We won't say the years, but what do you think are some of the
Why not?
reasons? Well, I think it's what are we at, 56,
Yeah,
57? Yeah, there you go.
67 was the year. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But just like, do you think this might be the year, just watching them early on? Did no? Okay.
I don't know. I just don't know. Like
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen, I think this team's been good enough in the past, and they haven't been able to figure it out for whatever reason. Part of which is the game changes in the postseason. But like, if you were to ask me if they were better suited to win the cup than, you know, the Oilers or any of the best teams in the Colorado Avalanche or the Vegas Golden Knights, I'm not sure they are until I see them in the postseason, and that's the it's happening in the NHL and the NBA right now, where the regular seasons don't mean a hell of a lot to the best teams, which is why the NBA is bringing in a tournament in the middle of the year, which is probably another topic
And
altogether.
and the no rest rule or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and the no rest rule, right?
Which is
Without a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just do you think for the Leafs specifically, because like I think last year they didn't score more than 3 goals in their last 5 or 6 playoff games. Is it as much just Matthews and Marner just stepping up, who have notoriously not done so in the playoffs? Like, is it as simple as that, or is there
Special
more to it?
players make special plays on special days.
There you go.
That's the old school line. And you need your best players to be your best players without a doubt. And I think that they've been caught in this, like, we need to help our goalies and be good defensively in Toronto. And that's part of the problem, is that they haven't had good enough goaltending. So in order to cover that, you have to force your best offensive players to also be good defensively.
Yeah.
And when it mattered most, those offensive players were really focusing on making sure that they were good defensively, and it takes away from their offensive capabilities. And so I think that's kind of a balance that the Leafs are fighting. I think this is the exact same thing that's happening in Edmonton, though they don't seem to be stressing their forwards too much, where
No.
McDavid and Draisaitl, I mean, all they need is a power play, and you throw out McDavid and Draisaitl and they score goals. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's like there's that balance. And a lot of teams, it's either like, okay, we'll just get the good enough goalie, Andre Vasilevsky, and maybe some good enough defensemen. You can look at Pietrangelo and the blue line in Vegas, or even Hedman in Tampa helping out Vasilevsky. Like, you have to have those pieces, I think, to win. Either a goalie stealing it and or a really good defense core along with your goal scoring. And I don't think the Leafs have figured that out yet.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it definitely on the nail. I want to ask you, just I'm gonna go run down a little bit of Toronto sports, but obviously I loved Masai Ujiri. I think maybe in my mind he had a god complex, because it felt like everything he did was the right move, and now it feels maybe a bit 360 on that. How would you maybe evaluate his tenure as I guess he's not GM, but GM president of the Toronto Raptors, where it was so great, and now it's
whatever it will be a success, because he won a championship, because he was able to pull off one of the gutsiest trades that I've ever seen in professional sports and have it work.
Yeah.
So success, well, it can't be at the top forever, and we all know that. Bill Belichick is struggling right now.
Yep.
Masai will not stay at the top. So whatever it is a success. Over the last little while, though, I completely understand if you're a Raptor fan and you're wondering what the hell's going on. And I have some theories. I think that he was trying to give Fred VanVleet the epitome of the culture, and Nick Nurse, the coach of the team that won the championship, the ability to compete because they thought they could. I don't know if that was the right answer. And I think that's why you saw what you saw this offseason, where everything changed. It was like, here's Jakob Pertl, here's your rim protector, Nick
Years.
Nurse, here's your pick and roll guy, Fred VanVleet. If we can't make it work, it's over. I'm going to give you the respect of giving you the pieces that you want and not send everybody out and not do what probably most people think we should do, which is just start over again. I'm going to give you the pieces. And it didn't work. And so you saw the offseason where everybody goes and it's a restart. And for me, this season will be about how long they give Pascal Siakam. It won't be the same as they gave Fred VanVleet and Nick Nurse. I think those were like the bedrock of what their culture was. I don't think that OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, even though he was great during the championship run, will get that same kind of leeway. I think you might see a couple of huge deals from the Raptors this year in an effort to restart whatever is next. And I know that their interest in Damian Lillard was, can we still rebuild on the run? Their interest in Kevin Durant was, maybe we can do this, just flip the script and keep going. And none of it worked. And that superstar still hasn't said yes to Toronto and or Canada. And I think Masai is coming to that realization right now that it's probably going to be a rebuild and not. I mean, if you hold on to Anunoby, he's young enough, maybe, but Pascal's not young enough anymore.
No. Yeah.
So I think the Raptors are in a real tough spot. I think Masai and Bobby Webster are in the real tough spot that every franchise faces. The difference is in, say, Golden State, you've already got multiple titles, right? You're looking at the Los Angeles Lakers trying to do the same thing that the Raptors are doing. They're trying to do it with LeBron James, and they're not doing it very well either. So it is very hard to do. And I think what you're seeing is the Raptors coming to the realization that they might not be able to do it this way. And thus those expiring contracts will be dealt.
Yeah.
And a new start may come.
Well, I hope that star is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander whenever he's a free agent. I think it's in like 4 or 5 years, so I'm praying for that. And at least the vibes seem to be way better than last year so far in preseason. It is preseason, but does seem quite more light at Raptors shoot-arounds these days. But I want to transition as best as I can. You I obviously covered this the Canadian men's basketball team. You and Sid and been big proponents of the national teams, not just basketball, but soccer, everything else. Do you find with Canada, the men's team making the World Cup, in soccer, the women's team obviously winning the gold medal, both basketball teams for men and women doing great stuff. Do you see a kind of a change in how within Canada people are looking at our national teams rather than?
I hope it's the start. Yeah. I hope it's the start, and it hasn't happened yet. Like I did a Canada-France game, I want to say in like the early 2000s at the Air Canada Center, and there was maybe 1,500 people there, and there were legit players on both sides. And I was just shocked that this stadium that sells out for the Toronto Raptors couldn't get 2,000 people to a national game with real players on both sides. Every other country on planet Earth, especially in basketball, like supports. There's go to a game in Australia, it's great. Go to a game in Europe, you can pull up the video of games in Europe. And the idea of like Luka not playing for Slovenia is just, it's not there. Like it's at a different level. And what I hope people, and I always said this about youth sports, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, till I pass this beautiful earth that we call home that sometimes isn't so beautiful, that you make the atmosphere. Like we make the atmosphere. So if you want it to be something, just do it, right? Like there are people at car races that have no idea what's going on at the car race, but they're having a blast, right? These cars are flying by, and you're like, that's all you got. But at the Indy 500, it is one of the greatest parties you've ever been to, where 80% of the people don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy when it comes to sports, but I would love to see, like, before I go, and I saw it in soccer. I honestly did, and it was an emotional moment. I went to the game with my son, where Canada clinched the spot in the
Oh, I
World
was
Cup.
there too. I was
Yeah.
there too. Yeah.
And it was freezing. And
Oh,
I grew up with a bunch of soccer dudes. I didn't even play soccer when I was young. I only
yeah.
started playing soccer as a men's league guy. And the guys that I grew up with, a couple of them went on scholarships to the States. I went to a school that had some real good, and I was like videoing on my phone and sending it to them. I was FaceTiming so that they could see what
Yeah.
they never thought they would see. And I would love to see that for basketball in
Yeah.
this country. I would love to see that for volleyball in this country.
Men
Like,
team just made the Olympics.
right.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
that's
crazy.
they're and that's a sport that people care about in a lot of different countries. And Canada can play men and women at that level.
Yeah.
So like I would love to volleyball is a great spectator sport. I would and
Such a good it's always here in Ottawa and I go
yeah,
every year. It's for the men's. They have
yep,
the what's it called? The World League. I don't have
yep.
the but
Yeah.
it's
They changed
awesome.
the name of the league a couple of different
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
But yeah, World
Nations League.
League
Was it Nations League? Anyways, it's
Nations League is soccer.
yeah. Yeah, I know it is for that too, but there's always a
Yeah,
bunch of nations leagues. But yeah,
yeah,
no, it's a great sport, but no one really follows it, right? Like, and
right. But you watch in Poland, like
it's
it's crazy.
crazy. Yeah.
And it's fun, and you would love to be there. And like we always talk about in Canada, college sports in the US, like Michigan. Oh, look at the Notre Dame. Look at that. That's unbelievable. You can do it. You could do it for the CFL if you wanted. When the Red Blacks came back, it was different than when I was covering the Rough Riders, right? Like
Yeah. And now it's back to here in
back to
Ottawa. It
Rough
sounds
Rider.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back to Rough Rider
Yeah.
territory.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you go
But
3-14 every year, it's hard to get a lot of people there. But yeah, exactly.
right. But if
Yeah.
you did get a lot of people there, they probably wouldn't go 3-14. Like there's a little chicken and egg going on in
Mhm.
Canada. And everyone keeps saying it's, oh, when we do this, we will show up. And what I've been saying is show up and it will happen. Like
Yeah.
if you're a Canadian basketball player and none of your friends who are Canadian give a crap if you're playing for Canada, then you're probably not going to, if there's not, if there's 1,200 people and you can hear your mom clapping, you're probably not going to be as enthused to play for your country. But if it's 19,000 flares and crazy, like it is for soccer now in this country, everyone's showing up and they're all like near tears in their eyes, looking up at the supporter section and going like banging that drum. Like, why can't we have that for basketball? Why can't we have that for volleyball?
Well,
And I hope we do get there.
I just want to go on Canada basketball because we've talked about it before. I listened to you with Donovan after they made I think it was made the semis, Donovan Bennett. But I'm gonna choose some again violence. Who would you take? Who's better for Team Canada in men's basketball? Steve Nash or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Who would you pick?
Nash in the Sydney Olympics, for those who might
Was
not be
amazing.
of that, was unbelievably good. And then, he kind of did his time and focused on the NBA. I think Shea could be better. And I think what we saw in the World Cup was I'm going to say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm just going to better than
Well,
the 2-time MVP. He won a medal. He,
yeah,
he, he had a better supporting cast without a doubt, but he was, in my mind, the best player in that tournament and carried the Canadians in moments where Canada in the past had tripped and fall and smashed some teeth out along the way. He
yeah.
did not let that happen. I'm going to say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
What do you think a moment like the Olympics and the stage, and now Embiid somehow is American now going for the States, which is just the biggest.
Front
I
runner.
was there with all the French reporters and they thought they were getting Embiid, but
Yeah.
just what do you think a moment like that? Like I know a lot of people covering the team, 2000 was this huge moment in their lives, and what do you think 2024 could be for? And hopefully, it looks like the women will probably make the Olympics as well for on the women's side, who's been amazing, came fourth.
Yeah.
But
Consistently strong. Yeah.
yeah, what do you think the Olympics will kind of do and maybe change the scope of Canadian basketball?
Yeah, I hope that it looks like the Americans. I think it's going to be LeBron's going away tournament. I think there'll be a commercial for Nike, and I think that they'll try and make Paris kind of their we are still the greatest on planet Earth. And I hope that Canadian fans aren't dismayed by that, because there's still a lot of great basketball. And the teams that have chemistry and the teams that have played together might have a chance to knock off the Americans, but it looks like they're going to put together another dream team for this. And I hope that I think maybe the moment was the World Cup. Like, and it's too bad that they didn't play for gold. And it's too bad that, because that kind of momentum would have been crazy. But it's go ahead.
Do you think winning the bronze medal and beating the States, the US, and beating the bronze medal is more valuable in a way for the game in this country than winning the gold without beating the US?
Yeah. Yeah, because so many people worship at the American altar when it comes to basketball. But I do think that there's an understanding, especially in Canada, among the real hoops heads. Like, if we're talking hardcore, which is what's probably watching this, you already know that the Europeans have closed the gap. Like, you already know that it is real good basketball being played in the Euro League. And I don't think that, like, just the average NBA fan understands that. And so when Canada goes on this run, it's really valuable. I think the hardcore hoops heads, they knew all along. They knew exactly that this American team wasn't as good, and that you didn't need to worship at their altar, and that they might be beatable, and they were very beatable in this tournament. And so for me, I think the hardcore hoops heads already knew. What we need is, instead of the 5,000 that would show up hardcore every time, I would love to see the 20,000 understand the circumstances of the world.
I've heard, and this was like more around the tournament, but I heard about a home and home Canada, USA, Toronto, and I think Vegas before the Olympics. Like that, I think would get a lot of people in the Scotiabank Arena, and that would really fill up the just would be an amazing spectacle. But I wanna before, I really appreciate how gracious you've been, Tim, with the time. I just want to let you off because I know you're a big believer in quotes. What's your favorite quote that you like to use the most with your kids or in any kind of setting?
You know, yeah, let me do this. Pardon my
That's okay.
up here.
Just for audio listeners, Tim is going to retrieve something.
So I have my work bag here. I'm moving the camera. You know, I have books full of quotes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have work, I have life, and I have family. Where would you like me?
Can you pick one of each? Is that something? Or
my favorite one for my kids and my family is our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And I think that's applicable in sports and work, in life. I believe that's Confucius.
I like the one I listened to it with Aaron. I think it was perspective is expensive. I really like that.
That was my own. That's my own.
That's your own. Okay. Well, there you go.
That's my own. And I've rewritten it. I've rewritten it 100 different times, and it never really feels the right way. Perspective is expensive. Perspective is often expensive. Perspective doesn't always have to be expensive. I don't know how it goes.
Okay.
But I do know that perspective is expensive.
Well, I'll remix it, and for myself will be perspective is expensive. I like thinking about it that way. Yeah. But Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time, showing us your quote books, and just coming along, this podcast. So I really do appreciate it. Love the show. Is there anything you want to plug for Sportsnet Central? Anything kind of coming up that you?
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I'm on in the morning, so if you're bored in the mornings or you need your highlights in 30 minutes, just flip on Sportsnet. We got you covered. We're going. You've heard of Blue Jays in 30. You've heard of everything in 30. Now you get your highlights in 30 as well. And your boy Uncle Timmy will be doing it.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Tim. I really appreciate it. Have a great not too busy sports calendar coming up for you. Obviously going to be quite busy. So I appreciate you making the time for me and coming on, and thanks again.
Anytime. And I do mean what I said off the top of this thing, which is I have all the time in the world for people that I see working hard in the industry. And from the moment I noticed, and then on to the covering of Canada at the World Cup, I respect the grind, and we'll always reach out for those working hard.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to shout out Arash Madani because he gave me a little mentorship out there.
Nice.
So I appreciate the kind words, and I just want to shout out Arash because
also a score guy.
I know,
Yeah,
and
also
very, very great guy. So thanks so much, Tim. Have a great year covering the all the sports everywhere for Sportsnet, and thanks again for everything.
Thanks, Alex.